Henry Kuttner's This World Is Mine.
Detailed retelling Part 1. The discovery and initial transformation.
The story begins with the protagonist, a seemingly ordinary man living in a mundane world who stumbles upon an extraordinary discovery that will forever change his existence.
Our main character leads a typical life filled with the usual frustrations and limitations that plague ordinary mortals' financial struggles, social constraints, and the constant feeling of powerlessness in the face of larger forces beyond his control. He works a dead-end job, struggles to make ends meet, and feels increasingly disconnected from a world that seems to offer little opportunity for advancement or fulfillment.
The pivotal moment arrives when he encounters a mysterious object or device, the exact nature of which defies conventional understanding. This artifact, possibly of alien origin or representing some advanced technology far beyond current human comprehension, calls to him in ways he cannot initially explain. The discovery occurs under circumstances that seem almost destined, as if the universe itself has conspired to bring him and this extraordinary device together at precisely the right moment. Upon first contact with the mysterious artifact, our protagonist experiences immediate and profound changes. The device doesn't merely grant him abilities, it fundamentally alters his perception of reality itself.
He begins to see the world through entirely new eyes, recognizing patterns and possibilities that were previously invisible to him.
The transformation is not just physical or mental, but metaphysical, touching the very core of his being and awakening capabilities that had remained dormant throughout his entire life. The initial manifestation of his newfound powers is subtle but unmistakable.
Small coincidences begin occurring with increasing frequency. Traffic lights change in his favor, parking spaces open up exactly when needed, and minor obstacles that would normally impede his progress seem to dissolve effortlessly. At first, he dismisses these occurrences as mere luck or coincidence, but as the pattern continues and intensifies, he begins to suspect that something far more significant is at work. As his awareness grows, so does his ability to consciously influence events around him.
What began as unconscious manipulation of minor circumstances evolves into deliberate control over increasingly significant aspects of his environment. He discovers that his thoughts and intentions can reshape reality itself, bending the world to conform to his desires and eliminating obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. The mundane problems that previously dominated his existence, financial difficulties, social rejection, professional stagnation, begin to resolve themselves in ways that seem almost magical. However, with this growing power comes an equally growing sense of isolation. The more he changes, the further he drifts from normal human experience and connection. Friends and family members begin to seem alien and incomprehensible to him, their concerns and limitations appearing increasingly petty and meaningless. The transformation also brings with it an intoxicating sense of superiority and entitlement. As his powers continue to develop and expand, he begins to view himself as fundamentally different from and superior to ordinary humans.
The world that once seemed so vast and intimidating now appears small and manageable, existing primarily for his benefit and amusement.
This shift in perspective marks the beginning of a dangerous psychological journey that will ultimately lead to far more significant and troubling changes in his character and worldview.
Part 2. The expansion of power and growing ambition. As our protagonist's abilities continue to develop and strengthen, the scope of his influence expands dramatically beyond the minor conveniences and coincidences that marked his initial transformation.
He discovers that his power to manipulate reality operates on multiple levels, simultaneously physical, mental, and social, allowing him to reshape not just his immediate environment, but also the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of the people around him. This revelation opens up possibilities that are both exhilarating and terrifying in their implications. The progression of his powers follows a clear trajectory from subtle influence to overt control. Where once he could only nudge circumstances slightly in his favor, he now finds himself capable of dramatic alterations to the fabric of reality itself. Buildings reshape themselves to accommodate his presence, weather patterns shift to match his preferences, and even the laws of physics seem to bend and flex according to his will. The distinction between the possible and impossible becomes increasingly meaningless as he discovers that reality is far more malleable than ordinary humans could ever imagine. Perhaps most significantly, he learns to manipulate human consciousness directly, reaching into the minds of others to alter their thoughts, memories, and perceptions. This ability proves to be both the most seductive and the most corrupting aspect of his transformation.
He begins by making small adjustments, ensuring that a rude clock becomes polite, that a difficult boss becomes accommodating, that attractive strangers find him irresistibly charming. These minor manipulations seem harmless enough, even beneficial, as they smooth his path through daily life and eliminate many of the social friction points that once caused him frustration. However, as his confidence grows, so does his willingness to make more significant alterations to human consciousness.
He starts rewriting entire relationships, transforming enemies into allies, rivals into admirers, and strangers into devoted followers.
The ease with which he can reshape human minds gradually erodes his respect for individual autonomy and free will. People become increasingly interchangeable to him, merely components in the grand design of his perfect world that can be adjusted, modified, or replaced as needed to serve his purposes. The intoxication of absolute power begins to fundamentally alter his personality and worldview.
The empathy and compassion that once connected him to his fellow human beings slowly drain away, replaced by a cold, calculating perspective that views others primarily in terms of their utility or entertainment value. He develops an increasingly grandiose sense of his own importance and destiny, coming to believe that his transformation was not accidental, but part of some cosmic plan that has elevated him above ordinary humanity for a specific purpose. This growing megalomania manifests in increasingly ambitious projects and schemes. No longer content with simply improving his personal circumstances, he begins to envision himself as a benevolent dictator capable of solving humanity's problems through the application of his superior wisdom and unlimited power. He starts small, perhaps improving conditions in his immediate neighborhood or workplace, but his successes only fuel his appetite for larger and more significant interventions in human affairs.
The psychological isolation that began with his initial transformation deepens considerably during this phase. As he continues to distance himself from normal human experience and emotion, he loses the ability to relate to others as equals or even as fellow beings deserving of respect and consideration. One-sided, with others existing primarily to serve his needs or validate his sense of superiority.
The loneliness that results from this isolation is profound, but he increasingly deals with it by surrounding himself with mind-controlled companions who provide the illusion of connection without any of the challenges or complications of genuine human relationships.
Part 3. The corruption of absolute power. The third phase of our protagonist's journey marks a crucial turning point where the intoxicating effects of unlimited power begin to corrupt him in fundamental and irreversible ways.
What began as seemingly benevolent improvements to his life and circumstances has evolved into something far darker and more disturbing. The line between helping others and controlling them has become increasingly blurred, and he finds himself making decisions that prioritize his own comfort and desires over the well-being and autonomy of those around him.
His manipulation of human consciousness becomes increasingly invasive and comprehensive. Where once he made subtle adjustments to smooth social interactions, he now routinely overwrites entire personalities to create the perfect companions, employees, and subjects for his expanding domain of influence.
The original personalities of his victims are not merely suppressed, but often completely erased, replaced by carefully crafted constructs designed to serve his specific needs and preferences. The moral implications of this psychological murder begin to weigh on him, but he justifies his actions by convincing himself that he is actually improving the lives of those he controls by freeing them from their own limitations and inadequacies. The scope of his ambitions continues to expand as he grows more comfortable with the exercise of absolute power. Local influence gives way to regional control, and he begins to envision himself as the secret ruler of increasingly large populations. He develops sophisticated systems for managing his growing empire of controlled minds, creating hierarchies of influence that allow him to extend his reach far beyond what direct personal contact would permit. Key individuals in positions of authority, politicians, business leaders, media figures, become his unwitting puppets, implementing his will across vast networks of social and economic influence. However, the exercise of such extensive power comes with unexpected challenges and complications. Managing the complex web of relationships and dependencies he has created requires constant attention and adjustment. The artificial nature of his constructed reality becomes increasingly difficult to maintain as contradictions and inconsistencies accumulate.
People begin to notice strange patterns and anomalies in the behavior of those under his influence, and he finds himself expending more and more energy on covering his tracks and maintaining the illusion of normalcy.
The psychological toll of his transformation becomes increasingly evident during this phase. The complete absence of genuine human connection has left him emotionally hollow and spiritually bankrupt. His relationships with others have become purely transactional, based entirely on dominance and control rather than mutual respect and affection. The loneliness he feels is profound and seemingly inescapable, made worse by the knowledge that any companionship he creates through mental manipulation is ultimately artificial and meaningless.
Actions that would once have horrified him now seem perfectly reasonable and justified.
The suffering he causes others registers only as minor inconveniences to be managed rather than genuine ethical concerns requiring serious consideration. He has become increasingly callous and ruthless in pursuit of his goals, viewing other human beings as obstacles to be overcome rather than individuals deserving of respect and consideration. The transformation has also affected his relationship with reality itself.
Living in a world that constantly reshapes itself according to his will has left him increasingly disconnected from any sense of objective truth or natural consequence.
He has become accustomed to having his desires fulfilled instantly and automatically, making him impatient and frustrated when confronted with any form of resistance or limitation. The natural world and its laws seem like mere suggestions that can be ignored or modified at will, leading to a dangerous overconfidence in his abilities and judgment. As this phase concludes, he stands at a crossroads that will determine not only his own fate, but potentially the fate of humanity itself. The power he wields has grown to truly cosmic proportions, but so has his isolation from everything that once made him human. The question becomes whether any trace of his original humanity remains, or whether he has become something entirely alien and potentially hostile to the species from which he emerged. Part 4. The ultimate consequence and revelation. The final phase of our protagonist's transformation brings both the culmination of his power and the ultimate revelation of what he has truly become.
His influence has grown to encompass vast swaths of human civilization, with entire nations unconsciously dancing to his will while remaining completely unaware of their puppet master's existence. From his perspective, he has achieved something approaching godhood, the ability to reshape reality itself according to his desires and to command the obedience of millions without their knowledge or consent.
However, this apparent triumph is shadowed by a growing sense of emptiness and purposelessness that no amount of power can fill.
Having achieved everything he ever thought he wanted, he discovers that ultimate power brings with it ultimate isolation. The world he has created is perfect in every superficial way. Wars have ended. Poverty has been eliminated, and human suffering has been dramatically reduced, but it is also sterile and artificial, lacking the spontaneity and genuine emotion that give life meaning and vitality. The artificial nature of his achievements becomes increasingly apparent as he surveys his domain.
Every smile is programmed, every gesture calculated, every relationship carefully orchestrated to serve his grand design.
The humans under his control move through their lives like sleepwalkers, going through the motions of existence without any real awareness or agency.
He has created a world of perfect order and harmony, but in doing so has eliminated the very qualities that make humanity worth preserving or protecting.
As his awareness of this fundamental contradiction grows, he begins to experience something he thought he had left behind forever: doubt.
The certainty that once drove him to ever greater exercises of power begins to crumble as he confronts the possibility that his transformation may not have been the blessing he initially believed it to be. The question of whether he has saved humanity or destroyed begins to haunt him with increasing intensity. The climax of the story comes with a profound revelation about the true nature of his transformation and the mysterious artifact that initiated it. He discovers that his experience is not unique, that throughout history, similar devices have appeared to individuals who possess the potential for this kind of transformation. Each recipient has followed a similar path, beginning with benevolent intentions, but ultimately succumbing to the corrupting influence of absolute power. The artifact is revealed to be a test of sorts, designed to identify and isolate individuals who represent a potential threat to the natural order of existence. The ultimate truth is both shocking and devastating. He has not transcended humanity, but has instead become something fundamentally opposed to it. The power he wields is not his own, but belongs to the artifact and the intelligence behind it. He has been transformed into an agent of a cosmic force that views humanity as a threat to be contained or eliminated.
His apparent godhood is actually a form of imprisonment, trapping him in a role that serves purposes far beyond his understanding or control.
This revelation forces him to confront the full scope of what he has lost in his pursuit of power.
His humanity, his connections to others, his capacity for genuine love and compassion all have been sacrificed on the altar of his ambition. The world he has created may be orderly and peaceful, but it is also dead in all the ways that truly matter.
He has become the very thing he once would have feared and despised, a tyrant whose benevolent intentions cannot mask the fundamental evil of his actions. The story concludes with our protagonist facing an impossible choice. He can continue on his current path, maintaining his artificial paradise while knowing that he has become a cosmic jailer responsible for the spiritual death of his entire species. Alternatively, he can attempt to reverse his transformation and restore humanity's freedom, but doing so would likely result in chaos, suffering, and his own destruction.
The final moments of the story leave this choice unresolved, forcing readers to contemplate the true cost of power and the value of human agency and authenticity.
In the end, "This world is mine" serves as a cautionary tale about the corrupting nature of absolute power and the importance of maintaining our connections to humanity and moral principle even in the face of unlimited opportunity for self-advancement. It reminds us that true strength lies not in the ability to control others, but in the wisdom to recognize and respect the inherent value and dignity of every human being.
Which book should I retell next?
Write in the comments.